Everyone who has travelled over eastern England knows the smaller country houses with buildings, usually in the Italian style, surrounded with parks of some 80 to 100 acres. I have to tell you of a curious series of events in such a house. It is Castringham Hall in Suffolk. A good deal has been done to the building since the period of my life. One feature that marked out the house from a score of others is gone. As you look back, you saw on the right a great old ash tree growing within half a dozen yards of the wall and almost touching the building with its branches. I suppose it had stood there ever since Castringham ceased to be a place. At any rate, I attained its full dimensions in the year 1690. In that year, the district in which the house is situated was the scene of a number of witch trials. Castringham contributed a victim to the extortions. Mrs. Mothersole was her name. She differed from the ordinary run of village witch only in being rather better off and in a more influential position. Efforts were made to save her by several reputable farmers, but what seems to have been fatal to the woman was the evident of Castringham Hall, Sir Matthew Fell.
Matthew, will you tell the court, please, what you saw in Mrs. Mothersole on the evenings that you mentioned?
Well, on 3 different occasions from my window, I watched her, Mrs. Mothersole, at the full of the moon, gathering sprigs from the ash tree house. She climbed into the branches and was cutting off small twigs with a peculiarly curved knife. And as she did so, she seemed to be talking to herself. I did my best to capture the woman. She had always taken alarm at some I made. All I could see when I got down to the garden was a hare running across the path to the village. On the 3rd night, at what speed I went straight to Mrs. Mothersole's. I had to wait a quarter of an hour battering at her door, and when she came out, she was very cool and apparently sleepy, as if just out of bed. And as I had no good explanation to offer, I had to apologize. Embarrassingly. Mainly on this evidence, though there was much more of a less striking and unusual kind from other parishioners, Mrs. Mothersole was found guilty and condemned to die. She was hanged a week after the trial with 5 or 6 more unhappy. The other victims were apathetic and down with misery. But Mrs. Mothersole was, as in life so in death, of a different temper. Oh, her poisonous rage did so bystanders, even upon the hangman, that it was constant for all that saw her. It was a living aspect of a mad devil. She always stands to the law, only she looked upon those that laid hands upon her with fearful advancement. Aye, the mere thought of it prayed inwardly my mind for 6 months after. But all that Mrs. Mothersole is reported to have said was seemingly meaningless words.
The guests at the hall, the guests at Castringham Hall, Sir Matthew. There will be guests at the hall.
Sir Matthew, then deputy sheriff, was present at the execution and was not unimpressed at the bearing of the woman. He shared certain misgivings over the whole business with the vicar of his parish as they rode from the scene. I'll say it again, Mr. The trial was not given willingly. I'm not infected with the witch-finding mania. I declare that I could not give any other account of the matter than happened, and I could not possibly have been mistaken in what I saw. The whole transaction has been repugnant to me. Now, I am a man who likes to be in terms with those about me. Yes, those, Mr. Crome. And the good vicar applauded them, as the man would have done, and was easily persuaded to take a late supper at the Hall. When Mr. Crome thought of starting about 9:30 o'clock, Sir Matthew and he took a little walk at the back of the house. They were inside, which I described as growing near the window, when Sir Matthew stopped. Mr. Crome, look there a moment. Matthew, at the ash tree there. Look, what is up and down the trunk of it? It is never a squirrel. They will all be in their nests by now. Oh, yes, I see some sort of mirror. What can you, Crome? Nothing of its color in this moonlight, Sir Matthew. But now it's gone. Was it? Well, for an instant there was a sharp outline. And where? Though it sounds foolish, that was not. It had more than 4 legs. Aye, more than 4. Matthew Fell was not downstairs at 6 in the morning, as was his custom, nor at 7, nor yet at. Hereupon the servants went to the chamber. When the door was at last opened from the outside, they found their master dead. Mr. as quickly as he could to the hall, and was shown to the room where the dead man lay. Many years later, Mr. Crome's notes regarding this were found among his papers. They showed how genuine a respect and sorrow he felt, and upon the common beliefs of the time. There was not any the least trace of an entrance having been forced to the chamber. Casement, as my poor friend would always have it in this season. He had his evening drink, all ale, in a silver vessel of about a pint measure. It had not drunk it out. This drink was examined by the physician from Bury, who could not, however, as he afterward declared upon his oath before the coroner's court, discover that any matter of a venomous kind was present in it. For, as was natural in the great swelling and blackness of the corpse, there was talk made among the neighbors of poison. The body was very much as it lay in the bed. It was so extreme a sort as gave too probable a conjecture that my friend and patron had expired in great pain and agony. And what is as explained, and to myself, the argument of some horrid and artful design in the purpose of this barbarous murder, was this, that which were entrusted with the laying out of the corpse, washing it, being both persons and very well respected in their mournful profession, came to me in great pain and distress of mind and body, saying what was indeed condemned you.
We had no sooner touched the breast of the corpse with our naked hands than we felt a violent smart and aching in our palms.
Oh, the swelling from the palms to the elbows so immoderately, the pain still continuing that afterwards we were forced to lay by the exercise of our calling.
And not to be seen on the skin. No mark on the skin.
Upon hearing this, I sent for the physician, and we made as careful a proof as by the help of a small magnifying lens of the condition of the skin on this part of the body. But to detect any matter of importance beyond a couple of small punctures or pricks, which then concluded were the spots by which the poison might be introduced, remembering that Borgia, own specimens of the horrid art of the Italian poisoners of the last age. So much is the symptoms seen on the corpse. As to what I am to add, it is merely my own experiment, to posterity to judge
whether there be anything of value therein. There was a table by the bedside, a Bible of small size in which my friend used nightly rising to read a set portion. And I, taking it up, without a tear duly paid to him, in my thoughts to make trial of that old, accounted superstitious practice of drawing the sword. I must needs admit that by my not much assistance was afforded me. Yet the cause and origin of these dreadful events may hereafter be searched out and set down the results. It may be found that they pointed the true quarter to intelligence than my. I made then 3 trials in the book, and placing my finger upon certain words, which gave in the first words from St. Luke, chapter 13, verse 7. Cut it down, cut it down. In the second, Isaiah, chapter 13, verse. It shall never be inhabited. It shall never be inhabited. And upon the third experiment, Job, chapter 39, 30. A young ones also suck up blood. A young ones also suck blood. That need be quoted from Mr. Crome's paper. Sir Matthew Fell was duly coffined and laid in. His Matthew II succeeded to the top estates. It is to be, though the fact is not surprising, that the new baronet did not know the room in which his father had died. Indeed, was it slept in by anyone but an occasional visitor during the whole of his life. He died in 1735. And I do not find that anything particular marked his reign, save a curiously constant mourning of his cattle and livestock in general, which tendency to increase as time went on. The second Sir Matthew was duly his son, Sir Richard. It was in his time that the great family pew was built outside of the parish church. So large were the squire's ideas that several of the graves on that unhallowed side of the building had to be disturbed to satisfy his requirements. Among them was Miss Mothersole. A certain amount of interest was excited in the village when it was known that the famous witch, remembered by a few, was to be exhumed. And the feeling of, and indeed disquiet, was very strong when, though her coffin was fairly sound and there was no trace whatever inside of it of bodies or dust. One morning, it was 1754, Richard woke after a night of discomfort. Mrs. Chiddock, I can certainly not sleep in that room. The chimney smoked persistently, yet it was so that I had to be kept up. Furthermore, something had so rattled about the window in the wind, no moment's peace. No, I'll certainly not smoke, Chiddock. I shall select a new room this morning.
As you say, there's the study across the hall, if I may suggest.
No, it has an eastern aspect. I must rest and look out so that the sun does not wake me early. And the room must be, I want servants forever passing the door.
Well, Sir Richard, you know there is but one room like this.
Oh? Which may that?
Matthew's room, the west chamber.
Well, put me in there. I lie there tonight.
No, there these 40 years. The changed since Sir Matthew died there.
I'm the Abbey chamber. Come along, Mrs. Chiddock. I'll see the chamber at least. It was opened, and indeed the smell was earthy. Sir Richard window, threw the shutters back, and the basement. The view was almost entirely blocked off by the...
Oh, sir, the tree. It makes the room so dampish.
Well, we'll shortly take care of that. Air the room, Mrs. Chittock, all today. Put bed furniture in the afternoon. Bishop of Kilmore arrives. You can put him in my old room.
But, sir, there's a fearfulness about it. It's the very room.
Yes, my grandfather died. Make no difficulties about it. I do not wish to... Be about the airing. Be about the airing. In the afternoon, the Bishop of Kilmore arrived. He had risked the approaching storm in order to have an hour with Sir Richard before the arrival of the other guests. The bishop had brought with him come upon exploring the papers and other remains of the once vicar of Castringham. And for the first time, Sir Richard was confronted with the enigmatical replicae of Mr. Crome, which you have They amused him. Well, my Bible gave one prudent piece of... Sit down. That stands for the ash tree, may rest assured. Such a nest of catarrhs and agues was never seen.
I was wondering, your parlour here contains the family books.
Ah, yes, I wonder whether yet. Now, let's see. The Bibles are kept over here. And I know a thick, dumpy... Ah, yes, here it is. Look here, sure enough, the inscription to Matthew Fell from his loving godmother, Anne Aldis. The 2nd of September, 1859. Well, it would be no bad plan to test him again, eh? I'll wager we'll get several family names from the Chronicles. Now, see, what do we have here? Thou shalt be in the morning, and I shall not be. Thou shalt seek me in the morning, I shall not be. Other guests. 5, wine, cards, and dispersal to bed. Sir Richard is distant his gun with the rest. He talks instead of Kilmore. We were walking along the terrace and talking decorations and improvements for the house. Bishop suddenly pointed to the window of the west room.
Get one of my Irish flock to occupy that room, Sir Richard.
Ah? Why is that, my lord? In fact, my own room.
Well, our Irish peasantry brings the worst of luck to sleep near an ash tree. And your fine grass is not 2 yards from your chamber window. Perhaps it has given you a touch of its quality already. You do not, I may say it, so much the fresher for your night's rest as your friends would like to see you.
Yes, that or something else. Me my sleep from 12 to 4, my lord. But tomorrow, so I shall not hear much more from it.
I applaud your determination. It can hardly be wholesome to have the air you breathe strained through all that leafage.
Your lordship is right there, I think. But I had not my window open last night. It was rather the on, no doubt from the twigs sweeping me open-eyed.
Oh, I think that be Sir Richard. Here, you can see it from this point. None of those nearest brown casement. Unless there were a gale, and there was none of that last night. They missed the panes by a foot.
No, sir, true. What then will it be, I wonder, that's scratched and rusted? Aye, and cover the dust on my sill with locks.
Ah, well, might it be the rats? The rats that must have come up through the ivy.
Of course, the rats. It was the rats. So the day passed, and night came, and the party dispersed to their rooms, and wished Sir Richard a better night. And now with the light out and the squire in. The night outside is still and warm, so the window stands open. There is very little light about the bedstead, a strange movement there. It seems as if Sir Richard led, rapidly, to and fro, with only the slightest possible sound. And now you would guess, so deceptive is the habit, that he had several heads, round and brownish, which move back and forward even as low as his chest. It is a horrible illusion. Is it nothing more? Ah, there, something drops off the bed with a soft plump, like a kitten, and is out of the window in a flash. Another, 4 of them, and after that, there is quiet again.
Thou shalt seek me in the morning, and I shall not be. Thou shalt seek me in the morning, and I shall not be.
And Matthew, so with Sir Richard, dead and black bed. A pale and silent party of guests and servants gathered under the window when the news was known. Ominous guesses were hazarded. Listeners, popish emissaries hinted the air. But the Bishop of Kilmore looked up at the ash tree. He noted a tomcat was crouching in the lower boughs, a hollow which years had gnawed in the trunk. It was watching something inside the tree with great interest. Suddenly it got up and crashed. Well now, what do you see there, inside the ash? Careful of the edge there. Careful now. But the bit on which it stood gave way, and the cat went slithering in. And looked up at the noise of the fall. It is known to most of us that a cat can cry, but few of us have heard a yell as came out of the trunk of the great ash. 2 or 3 screams there were, and light and muffled commotion or struggling was all that came. But Lady Mary Harvey fainted outright, and the housekeeper stopped her ears and fled till she fell on the terrace. The Bishop of Kilmore, Sir William Kentfield, stayed.
There's something more than we know of in that tree, my lord. An instant search.
I agree with you there, Sir William. We must get to the bottom of this. These terrible deaths is there, in the ash tree. A ladder was brought, and one of the gardeners went up, and looking down the hollow could detect nothing dim indication of something moving. They got a lantern, and let it down by a rope cautiously. They saw the yellow light upon his face over, and the face became struck with an incredulous terror and loathing.
Oh!
He fell back from the ladder and fall inside the tree.
Quick, Sir William, catch the man. What has he seen? He's in a dead faint, my lord. Some time I thought any word can be got from him. Oh, but look to the tree. Look to the tree, my lord. It's aflame.
The bystanders made a ring at some yards' distance, and Sir William and the bishop set weapons and tools they could. Whatever might be using the tree as its lair would be forced out by the fire.
And so it was. First, we saw a round body, covered with fire the size of a man's head, appear very sudden, then seem to collapse and fall, this 5 or 6 times. Then a smaller ball left here and grass, where after a moment it lay still. We went as near as we dared to it, and saw. Oh, lordship, it's an enormous spider. The remains, veinous and seared, an enormous spider. And as the fire burned, more terrible bodies like that began to break out from the trunk. And it was seen that these were covered with hair.
There will be guests at the hall. There will be at Castringham Hall, Sir Matthew. There will be guests at the hall.
All that day the ash burned, and until it fell to pieces, the men stood about it, and from time they killed as they darted out. At last was a long interval when none appeared, and we cautiously moved in and examined the roots of the tree. We found below it a round place in the earth, wherein were 2 or 3 bodies of these creatures, made by the smoke. And what is to me more curious, at the side of this den, against the wall, was crouching the anatomy or skeleton of a human being, skin dried upon the bones, having some remains of black hair. It was pronounced by those that later examined it to be undoubtedly of a woman, and clearly dead for a period of 50 years.